Back again with a tier list of albums this time. I figured out another band that I could do a list on. It wasn't Radiohead, and it's actually a band that maybe not a lot of people know. Um, so this is Death Cab for Cutie. It's a indie pop, indie rock. Let's see. I'll just go to their page. Yeah, indie pop, indie rock. Not so much Midwest. You'll see later. Maybe alt rock and stuff. Uh, there's some elements of indie folk and dream pop on certain albums, but yeah, they're basically an indie pop band. That's the kind of the sound I describe them as. Um, I picked this because I was actually in the same town as when or where the band was formed in Bellingham, Washington. I went to school there. Western Washington University is where they got formed, and I've actually driven by the house where they did practices and everything all the time. Again, it was back in the 90s, so not in my time, but I've seen them in Bellingham at least once, and I've seen them in Seattle at least once on a concert. I might have seen them a third time, I just can't recall. But both the times were free, so that was kind of fun to go see those guys. And yeah, no, let's just we're gonna do it. So these are all the major studio albums. They have a couple EPs. They have I can show you right now. They have um, Forbidden Love EP, Stability EP, the John Bird EP. Yeah, there's a lot of these, and I wouldn't recommend any of them besides maybe Forbidden Love or Stability. Or no, the Open Door's okay. But anyway, I wouldn't recommend any of them if you're not going to listen to the albums first, because that's not a good representation of their music to start off with. It's really just kind of like B-sides, live covers, or alternate covers of alternate versions of their songs. So I'm not going to push you guys in that direction. Anyway, so we'll just start with the studio albums and everything. And as I haven't pointed this out in any of the previous tier lists before, but since I do it for albums, if I put an album in the S tier, so this is not going to be the case, but if I put an album in S tier, if I put Kintsugi in S tier, that means that it's S tier for the band, not as albums as a whole, like in the general scope of music in general. Because if that was the case, it'd be like way the fuck down here and stuff. It would be like, yeah, you'll see that later on. So if there's an S tier album, it's because it's S tier for Death Cab for Cutie as a band, not as music as a whole. Because I just think that looks a little bit better presentation wise. So yeah. Anyway, they listed it in order this time. That's totally fine. So anyway, we'll get to something about airplanes. So this is in the late 90s. I think it's 1999 is when this comes out. This is one of the cases where it's pretty typical for a band to not have their sound that they want to have that makes them unique to themselves fully formed, and it's very obvious in this one. I would just say, yeah, if you know the band Built to Spill from Boise, Idaho, they get kind of grouped together as like a covers band, or as like a comparison made for them on this record, because of just how Ben Gibbard's voice sounds compared to the singer of Built to Spill. I can't remember that guy's name at the moment. But those two bands were around at the time. Built to Spill was around for at least more of the 90s decade. So if you listen to this, you'll definitely hear the influences between the two bands. That being said, it's not bad, because I do actually like Built to Spill comparatively. I think it's like apples and oranges and stuff kind of conversation happening. But anyway, yeah. So this I'd put in the B tier. Again, if you watched my Weezer albums tier list, you know I have a bias towards when they turn into like the low fidelity style of sound or whatever. But it's important to know that there are artists that do that with intention, and then there are artists that do that because that's all they can do, is because their recording equipment isn't that good, it's subpar, and therefore their work can suffer for it if you're not experienced in that style of music. And with Something About Airplanes, I think it's kind of a mix of both. I think there's things that could have been done better if the mixing had been done a little bit more high fidelity and everything. But that being said, I kind of just like it. It just sounds like alt rock, 90s alt rock mixed with tinges of indie pop that you'll see later on certain albums. So I can show you like a couple of the track list here and see. But anyway, yeah, so Bend to Squares, President of What, Amputations, The Face That Launched 1,000 Shits. There's just these, they're not very memorable songs. They'll play them live. I just personally got a little bit out of it. But then the thing I was mentioning earlier where they've got hints of Midwest emo in there are prominent in their earlier albums and everything. So if you're kind of into the emo scene, you might like maybe not this album in particularly, but if I'll recommend something later, then yeah. But anyway, I'll just leave it there at the B tier. I'll listen to this from time to time, but I'm mostly just picking songs out of it and stuff. We have the facts and we're voting yes. So I actually saw this album in the public library when I think back before streaming services were a thing, and I had to get all my CDs at the public library. And I thought the cover was interesting. The music at the time I didn't really care for. That being said, I think it's gotten tremendously better over time having listened to it and stuff. So I'm going to put it in the A tier because I think it's just it hones in a little bit more of the sound that is, and the people that have listened to Death Cab for Cutie will know this, is that there's a distinct indie pop 2000s sound that they had that made them very unique to themselves. In which I would say, like, basically up until Plans or something, they have kind of a distinct Death Cab for Cutie sound, and then they start to experiment more with it in Narrow Stairs that kind of diverges away from some of that and everything. But anyway, so yeah, no, this is a great... this is probably the best version of, if you were going to be an emo sound, I would go for this one. It has elements of slowcore in it too, if you like Red House Painters, that sort of stuff. I actually really like that. I got introduced to slowcore pretty late, and I think that you can definitely hear the influences from, maybe not specifically Red House Painters, maybe there's Low in there, but I would have to go back and listen to it specifically to find those influences. But anyway, so yeah, elements of slowcore. I don't know why that's listed twice, but anyway, so this is definitely... So they don't have a knack for writing an album for the album's sake, where it's a concept album. They don't really do that too often. It's usually just a batch of really good indie pop tracks is typically the case when they go into recording and everything. So, but for this one, I think they really kind of had a whole concept going through it, and I thought that was really awesome. So, but like if you were going to listen to the singles and stuff, I would recommend the 405. That's a pretty good one. Company Calls, not Epilogue. Epilogue goes into more of the slowcore aspect of it. But there's a lot of songs that are like career highlights on here, like Scientist Studies. Because something I will say about this is that I like a younger Ben Gibbard in his voice. That it sounds less processed when they do the vocal mixing and everything. It sounds more authentic, if I could put it that way. It sounds more believable than when he's writing songs later in his career for Death Cab, and so I think that just makes the music extra special. It gives it something else, so that's what gives it points here. And I remember listening to a little bit of the reading an interview online on an article about what sort of state of mind he was in when he was recording and everything. But it's really good. No, I recommend. It's just I tend to find myself listening to this all the way through versus wanting to listen to maybe just the 405 or Scientist Studies, because it just works together as an album. But yeah, no. Anyway, this is just called the Photo Album. I'm pretty sure. This is the one where I think more people like this than I do. It does accomplish what I was saying before, where it gives Death Cab for Cutie its own unique sound. They've gotten away from the Built to Spill influences at this point. And so, yeah, I just think that the worst thing about it is that since they have that unique sound, there's not a lot of perfectly executed songs when they finally have like their honed in sound. But that being said, I'm still going to put it there in the B tier and stuff. I just have... It's a weird detour for me. I've listened to this plenty of times, and I'm not saying there's not good songs on it. But like A Movie Script Ending, that's literally about this church that I used to go to as a kid in Bellingham. Like I Was a Kaleidoscope. I don't know if Styrofoam Plates, but Blacking Out the Friction, I'd recommend those. I would say if you're going to listen to this, listen the whole way through. But yeah, no, it definitely... It just hones in more of like the sound that they were going for and everything. But it's on the poppier side. So if you I just personally didn't get much. I think in my terms of what I like in my music, I just kind of don't care for it as much, because I tried to listen to this and I just hold the same opinion about it or whatever. This, and I think this might change over time. I might put it down a little bit more. Anyway, yeah, we'll leave it at that because now it's Transatlanticism. And if you are watching and you know anything about Death Cab, you know this goes in S tier because this is basically their running on what's the turn of phrase? It's they're running on all four cylinders. Basically, like everything just works really well. It's just a huge collection of indie pop, indie rock tracks that are all really fire. And if something isn't, it works into the instrumental theme of the album. There isn't like a grandiose there isn't as much of a concept, I should say, as we have the facts that's holding the album together. They make up for that though with I think more of the songs blending in and sounding more necessary to each other in terms of the instrumentals. But yeah, no, this is definitely, and it's nice because I might, well, depending on your taste, if you like more of the indie rock tinge than the indie pop, I think they go in that direction a little bit more this time around, which I personally like. So if you have that preference, then I would recommend this as as your first album to listen to. I'll recommend something else later for the more indie pop oriented, but yeah, no, I really like this album. Cover art's pretty cool. Not that matters. And something I will say too is I think up until Kintsugi, the bassist, I believe, Chris Walla, he is the producer for all the albums up until Kintsugi when he like leaves the band. So I thought that was kind of neat. But yeah, let me just check this out. And then this is the final album they do with a small label, recording label. I can't remember which label if it says on here where they go, but not a big deal. This is just their last time as kind of like an indie band when that phrase was referred to as like smaller bands that like were on smaller labels versus the bigger ones. yeah, but no. Title and Registration, whereas Sound of Settling, those are probably like the most poppier tracks and everything. Transatlanticism is probably in their top 5, if not like one of their best songs, if their best song that they've ever recorded. But a lot of these songs work better in context of the album as a whole, because I'm not listening to the New Year, I'm not listening to Lightness by itself, I'm listening to the whole album. It's another thing where I'd rather just listen to the whole thing by the time I'm listening to it. But I think on my liked songs on Spotify, I have Title Registration, Transatlanticism, maybe A Lack of Color. But yeah, no, it's really good, and highly recommend as your first album to listen to. Okay, so now, after the success of this, Transatlanticism, and I think they were on the OC also, they made an appearance on there, so that's basically tells you what level of status they had. Sorry, I was drinking some coffee. They grab onto a major label, and for better or for worse, I would think worse, but that's my opinion. I'll hold it to that. Then they get to Plans, which is basically just an indie pop. It's in that direction, more of the indie pop versus the indie rock. However, I still feel like at this point they're on a really strong creative high in terms of like their songwriting and their instrumentals and everything. It's again more to like the unique Death Cab for Cutie sound, so I'm gonna put it in the A tier. It's pretty much tied with We Have the Facts in terms of how good the album is and stuff. I think I enjoy these two things for different elements. I enjoy this for the poppier side. I enjoy this for more the slow core side of it. But yeah, no, it's if you wanted a more easy on the ears, I was gonna say coffee shop style indie pop, where it's like, you know, your fucking mom could listen to this or something like that. Unless, well, mom's this age or the same age as fucking Death Cab for Cutie, so I don't know if I'm offending anybody, but I don't give a fuck. But anyway, yeah, no, this is just, I'd say this is the easiest going to listen to, more so than Transatlanticism, even though I think this is the best one, because you just have the radio singles here finally. Not to say they didn't have any radio singles, but I Will Follow You Into the Dark is like a big single for some reason. I do not care for it. It's fine. But Soul Meets Body, Crooked Teeth, those are all indie pop jams and stuff. And you can kind of see that Rate Your Music actually flipped it too. It's indie pop first and then indie rock second. So, yeah. But no, all the songs are pretty good. I would listen to it all the way through. I recommend more of these slower tracks like Stable Song, Brothers in a Hotel Bed. Someday You'll Be Loved is more of a single, but yeah, no, they just experiment a little bit more, and I thought it was pretty well executed for the most part. It just, I think it actually, I appreciate it more because it actually does something different than Transatlanticism, because if they went in the same direction in their sound, I wouldn't appreciate Plans as much as I do. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say. Okay, so Narrow Stairs. God, I haven't listened to this one in a while. I'm gonna put it here for right now. It's the first time I feel like Death Cab really hits a creative lull in their sound. I think this is the point in which they had kind of exhausted themselves in terms of like the sound they were going for with that quote-unquote Death Cab for Cutie sound, and then they try to include different elements of, I was going to say world music, it's not that, but just there's a lot of experimentation they do on this that's it kind of gives you it's a little bit eyebrow raising. You kind of aren't there for, or you might be confused, but listening to this, it might be like a stronger detour from Transatlanticism to Plans than it like, or a stronger detour from Plans to Narrow Stairs than it was from this to this. So that's at least what I think. So I'm gonna look at this really quick because there are really good songs on here. Kath is a really good song. Talking Bird is fine. This was the main single, Grapevine Fires, and I just thought it was. I think over time I've just had a lackluster opinion of it. It just has waned on me over the years. But there's a couple songs here that just I don't care for. You Can Do Better Than Me is kind of, I treat it like an interlude and stuff. Pity and Fear I don't care for. They try to bring in new instruments and everything. I Will Possess Your Heart is awesome, but I think what they did on that one is they knew the success of Transatlanticism, and so they tried to make a 7+ minute song that they thought was going to pan out, and it does for the most part, but it doesn't equate instrumentally or lyrically even as good as Transatlanticism did. But don't care for Long Division. There's cuts on here that I just really want to skip, and I think that's the first time, because I didn't feel that way with Plans, so that's why I'm putting it down here on B tier, because there's some songs here I would just rather skip. I think that's kind of what I'm categorizing the B tier as. Everything. Okay, so Codes and Keys. This is the first album I get where I discovered Death Cab for Cutie. Yeah, this is just they basically, after once they're in Narrow Stairs, they're just going like full on experimentation phase. And this is where these are all the 2010 albums. So this is where they introduce more electronic elements into their music, for better or for worse. Yeah, I think I might put it there. Let me look at this again, because I need to look at this track listing. Yeah, there's just a lot of songs here where I just think the experimentation is, that's what I'm thinking of. Because for those that don't know, Ben Gibbard did a side project the same year in 2003 as Transatlanticism, which was the Postal Service. I can't remember the other guy's name, but that he did it with. But that was a heavy indie pop album, and I think what he ended up doing is he incorporated some of those indie elements into his band's music, and it has mixed results. So this is the first outing they do with Codes and Keys, and I just it's executed either horribly, somewhat okay, or whatever. But You Are a Tourist is probably the best example of it. It's one of their best songs, but it makes everything pale in comparison to it. It's like I would rather listen to this album all the way through, just because I can't listen to it any other way, I think, because Monday Morning I don't care for. Portable Television I really don't. That sounds like a piano waltz style thing, and it's very not interesting. Codes and Keys has a booming like drum line or whatever the whole time, and then Home is a Fire is probably like I don't know if it's their worst one or their worst opener, but yeah, then there's just a lot of really forgettable songs on here, and I think just I just don't find myself coming back to this as much. I'd have to listen to it again, but I don't think it's merits a B tier record. Maybe it does. It's definitely the weakest, I would say. I would rather listen to like probably these guys before I would go to this one first, but I'll leave it there. Okay, so Kintsugi is the first time where Chris Walla comes out. I can't remember if he produces this album, but it's I think I might put it there. I think it's their worst album. I think he might produce it, or he has like a handful of tracks on here, and then it's the demos. There's only a couple songs on here. This is just the songs are kind of okay on this. Black Sun was a okay single. No Room in Frame. But then they go into like some weird territory. They go into weird indie dance pop with I think it's Good Help is Hard to Find, and I wasn't really on for it. But then You've Haunted Me All My Life. It's very boilerplate in terms of like how it's projecting. It doesn't. Something I'll say, and this is where the songwriting gets really bad. I would say where there's kind of it's more metaphorical in the older music and stuff. There's really good uh, analytics. I was gonna. It's just they have a good way of writing a song that isn't very direct. It's indirect in the sense that like they're hiding it in some way lyrically that fits the tone of the music. Versus like with Kintsugi, it's like you've haunted me all my life kind of thing, and I'm just like, what the fuck when I first heard that. Uh, Hold No Gun. I just yeah. There's a lot of songs. I don't have this in my Spotify. I don't think. I just have the singles and that's about it. And I tried. I remember when it came out and I was hyped for it and stuff. And the whole theme of the album is supposed to be about the concept of kintsugi, where it's like you put gold. You replace the cracks of a jar or like a urn, or not an urn, but ceramics with gold, so you can clearly see the flaws that have happened. But just that being said, I was just not. I'm not a fan. I was not a fan. I'm not wanting to listen to this a lot of the time. Yeah, no, I guess Chris Walla didn't do it. It's Rich Costy or whatever. Um, yep, and it definitely shows. It definitely shows. That's the first time they don't have Chris Walla, and I think that was the special sauce about the band and stuff. So, yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. Okay, so thank you for today. I think they've had some time to work together as a band on this finally. And they added two new members to the band, for better or for worse. I saw them do a tour for this one. This feels like a lesser. I'm gonna put it C. I feel like this is a lesser Plans. They're really going for this. I remember when I first listened to this, and I thought this was like, this is gonna sell at fucking coffee shops everywhere. It's gonna be like freaking moms in their freaking mid 40s to early 50s are gonna love this sort of thing. Not because that's the same age as the band members, but I was like, it sounds like a mix of dad rock with coffee shop pop, if that makes sense. Uh, it's just very. They found a way to use the indie-tronic elements to make their indie pop sound very safe and everything, and so a lot of the songs are really inoffensive and very by the numbers, I would say. I think they have the worst single on here, which is Gold Rush. I did not like that single when it came out. I don't like it still. There's songs on it that are better. Northern Lights is so much better of a song. You should have just used that. And that's got the I can't remember the name of the artist, but it's the female singer from Churches that does a guest guest vocals on it, I should say. But wow, yeah, no, I never really enjoyed too much of the individual songs. I just found myself wanting to listen to the whole album because I'm not gonna say stomachable or palatable, but I definitely don't want to listen to this unless I'm listening to the whole thing. But Autumn Love. When We Drive, yeah, and even Northern Lights is just that you'll know when it's very coffee shop sounding. It sounds like this is very inoffensive and stuff. And same thing with the goddamn album art cover. Like, God, so many people could do that in Adobe Flash or whatever. So they just go for the same font as they did last time. I'm not happy about that. I really think that they just played it safe with this one. You know, for better or for worse, because it does sound better than Kintsugi. It sounds like a better album overall. And that's why I think their first outing with the Indietronic sound, it might be because that was Chris Walla doing the producer work, but I just think that they mix enough of the experimentation. They're at least taking a risk here, and that's, I think, why I keep it up here and everything. But yeah, no, I think that's about it. So I would say avoid this maybe for the singles or something. I don't know if I put it in C. I don't care for this really at all. And I don't think I'd rather listen to a Built to Spill influenced Death Cab album than I would this. But it's just really okay and stuff. Yeah, I might put that down there too. I think that's how I would do it. Okay, let me just see how I want this. Would I listen to emo this before? No. This always changes over time. I flip how I want to listen to that and stuff, but I would probably do yeah, that would probably be my listening order if I was to recommend it. So in case because obviously I like the more indie rock taste, that's why I think also the albums on the lower end, since they're more indie pop oriented, I would rather avoid them. But for right now, this is my listening order. I would do Transatlanticism, then Plans, then We Have the Facts, then the photo album, Narrow Stairs, Something About Airplanes, Codes and Keys, Thank You for Today, and then Kintsugi. It's just like, recommend these. If you find that you're enjoying like any of these albums, go to these. And then at that point, if you're like, okay, I really do kind of like elements of all of these and everything, I enjoy this, then I would recommend going to this. And so this is just like for the deep dive fans and everything, but highly recommend this as just an indie pop record in general, not even as just a Death Cab record. I'd also recommend the Postal Service album Give Up if you wanted some 2000s indie pop. I actually think that would be in the, if I was to give that a score on here, I'd probably put it in the S tier. I think it's that good. They kind of have like this creative high in the early to mid 2000s and stuff, like between like like 2005, which is when this is coming out, and then 2001, I want to say. So 2001 to 2005 is pretty much like their creative peak as a band and everything. But yeah, no, that's the list. Thanks for watching, and hope you get something out of this, and I will see you guys in the next stream. Alrighty, bye-bye.